Landon over at the acoustic room has once again pulled up a Les Paul that we've never seen before. Look at this thing, it's absolutely gorgeous. Not only all the ringy wood grain and dark molassesy color, it's got this interesting like German carved shelf to it on the backside. Needless to say, that's not the only thing strange about this one. Can we even consider this a Les Paul at all? I don't know. It's got the shape, but definitely not our usual constructions here. It is labeled as a one-of-a-kind fine art instrument, the Orville Les Paul. Designed and created by Philip R. Jones. If you're not familiar, Orville Gibson is the guy who started the Gibson Guitar Company. Now what year depends on how you want to slice it, but typically Gibson celebrates 1894. But a lot of his first instruments looked kind of like what we were seeing there. Some sort of a rope-looking binding, a really oblong oval-shaped sound hole. The early designs of Gibson guitars really did look like this. And sometimes even this. In the early days, he was most well known for mandolins, but the backsides of those would also have this very similar carve to them. So the story behind this one-off is this celebrated luthier for the 100th anniversary of the company, again 1894 through 1994, wanted to create something of his stylings, but on the most popular model of today, the Les Paul. So here we can see the decorative border again. But what I really like is over here, it reminds me of a dice. Just getting a number 3. It's a little bit more decorative than usual. You also have some inlays within your bridge pins. But then look closely over here. You've got a very ornate butterfly over here. That is crafted using multiple pieces of abalone as well as mother of pearl. You can see just how much the clear coat has ambered over the years. But wow, look at the brilliance of that abalone right there. That's crazy. And if you think they're just pulling that out of left field, no. Many of his early works also had similar things. Except for this one looks more like a moth or some sort of other bug. So they went with something a little bit prettier over here. So if you're curious why some Les Paul Ultimas have butterflies on their inlays, I'm sure that's harkening back to that. But having this large sound hole, that means it's primarily an acoustic guitar. This is before they made the Les Paul acoustic. Like that one anyways, but the Les Paul Jumbo technically existed all the way back in the late 60s. So that also adds an interesting element behind this one. And we haven't even talked about the headstock yet. Having the banjo-style tuners, that's another thing that he did, so they play tribute there. And if you look up here, you might be like, what's all this crescent moon with star inlays? If I remember correctly, it's actually an Islamic symbol, but many of the early day Gibsons had that. Now, as far as how closed the moon was and how big and orientation, that varies year to year, but rather than a name, that's what they were adorned with. So, knowing what you know then, the 2002 Faded series with the crescent moon inlays, now you know the true reason why they decided to slap those on there. And even the fretboard's kind of interesting on how it's inlaid. No first fret, okay, but no third? Just 5th, 7th, 10th. 12th, then 15, 17, 20 gets a double. I would imagine that harkens back to some mandolins. Doesn't make much sense from a guitarist standpoint, but that's not what the purpose of this piece was for. But we can definitely see by the way that the light paints the top, it still has a carved belly, so it's kind of just like the back. They just finished it in a black hue. But wait till you see the rest of the back. We've got even more to talk about here. Not only is the wood grain and color gorgeous, and you've got that carve to it, I love how it continues up and around the heel. Here's another good shot of that just to show you how deep of a carve that is. But now, looking closely at that neck, pretty sure that's an extended V-shaped neck profile. I think it slenders down into a regular C. But another thing you might notice is, hey, what is this going on up here? That is technically a volute. That's how Orville did them in the olden days. And is Gibson's reasoning why they shaped the apex head carve the way they did. It's just a modernized take on that. Martin guitars also utilize a similar approach. So what a cool Les Paul. So much history and throwbacks all into one. You have to be a real early days of Gibson historian to fully, truly appreciate this, but I hope this helps you understand it a little bit more. As needless to say, this is not too cheap. However, usually the acoustic room is like way more expensive than that. I don't think that's too atrocious of a price for what this is. Limited buyer pool, but pretty cool. But reading our description, it does have an electronic pickup in it. I would imagine it's a piezo. But Landon goes on to say that he thinks it's best suited as an electric guitar. I think that's his candid way of saying, yeah, it's an acoustic guitar, but it doesn't sound as good as the others. It's too small-bodied. But one last thing to appreciate is the fact that we still have the natural edge. He has confirmed that's an ebony fretboard and an arched spruce top. If you want another spruce top Les Paul, check out the Wes Paul. That's a fun one that we documented a couple of years ago, part of the Florentine series. But if you're looking for weird and expensive, look what Chicago Music Exchange listed. This ain't an EDS 1275, it's a EBS F1250. Beautiful. It's a bass 6-string electric guitar combination, essentially an EB3 on this side and some sort of a mutant monster 6-string over here. But did you catch what's underneath here? It's one of the Fuzztone circuits built in the guitar. There actually is an EBOF model if you want something a little bit cheaper, but still with the vintage flair. Except for on those, they just built it in as the second half of the pickguard. Is it cheaper just to buy the Maestro Fuzztone and hook it up to your guitar? Yes. 1,000 times yes, but it's not as cool. Especially when you slap it into a double neck. I mean, what more do you really need? It's nice of Chicago Music Exchange to get some guts photos too. If you're familiar with the Fuzztone, maybe you can look at that, see is it the same or did they modify things? Looks like we got some modern batteries in there. That's crazy. I never thought about the fact that you'd have to change batteries on that. But my biggest question is, does it affect the 6-string side or only the bass? Because I might be wrong, but I can't remember a guitar that came stock with that at that time period. But another unique thing about this versus a 1275 is the fact that we've got dot inlays on both sides of the neck. But they finished it in a nice jet black ebony. For the most part, this seems to actually been well kept. I mean, it's used. Nowadays, people mainly collect them just for the novelty of it all. But look, he's even got these little flowers on it. And what I assume is the original case. And if we can believe this, only 22 of these were made like that. But the next thing that's so great about this one is just take a look at that finish checking. Absolutely gorgeous. Reminds me a lot of the Slash double neck. Now that paper did say a couple of expertly done repairs. I'm assuming it got a little cracked right there at one point. I would rather have that than this. They still have the patent number T-tops in there. Not every day you get to peek inside one of these. And now these photos live on forever. The more you know. If there's not one already, I hope Nathaniel gives that thing a spin. That Chicago Music Exchange's main demo where he just takes guitar to a whole new level. Next on Crazy Guitars You Didn't Know Existed, we've got an SJ-200 Custom by Ruhr Guitars over in Hattingen. The back is nothing special. 3-tone sunburst, a little bit of red, brown, and yellow. You've got your decorative stripe on the back. You've even got a heel cap before you get to your 3-piece maple walnut neck, also having the burst pattern and flame figurings. I would imagine there might be a stinger there. But wow, look at that! What is going on this thing? It's not even the fact that it's a double pickguard. It's a double custom pickguard that's really not even perfectly mirrored at all, because if you look directly in the center, they had to span the butterfly across too. Everything else was mirrored, but that took extra effort. Let's look down here. We've got hummingbirds from the Hummingbird guitar, and they had to custom sculpt it that way it just didn't look weird. Goes right around your bridge. And on top of that, it's a tortoiseshell material, which unfortunately means it's likely celluloid is going to off-gas and eventually destroy this guitar. But it's just so cool to see a hummingbird and once again a butterfly coming on to a model that doesn't normally have this. I mean, for example, here's what a double pickguard normally looks like on a J200. There's no fancy animals, and my goodness, I used to think these things look fancy, but now it just pales in comparison to the ultimate Mac Daddy. Taking up way too much of the guitar than it really needs to. Even the Bob Dylan collector's edition of his J200 just doesn't quite look as fancy as it once did, even though it's got abalone everywhere. And it's on sale. Their idea of a sale, about $7,000, but that's shipped to you in the United States. J200s are certainly expensive. It's the first one of these to ever pop up to my eyes, and I like it. I think they should make more of these. Harkens back to a simpler time, even with our little hot dog body mustard line butterfly. But reading our Soundhole sticker, looks like it's a fairly modern one from 2024. And it looks like the pickguard design was done exclusively by them, and they did 10 of those. Perhaps we'll be talking about these in the future as the first time the J200 Hummingbird existed or something. And we started with the acoustic room, we'll end with the acoustic room. For $17,500, here's what we got going on. Looks like a whole bunch of Koa, and you get the old-timey Gibson logo done up in mother of pearl, then later on adorned with some abalone. Looks like leaves and flowers. But something about that Koa headstock veneer works really well for an acoustic. Because normally they make that out of a Hollywood, or it's just a black peghead fiberboard veneer. Having a little bit more wood coming through there is a nice touch. And of course, we've got the fancy boy Grover Imperial tuners. But then, well, bam! You got a whole bunch of new stuff going on here. This reminds me a lot of the Grizzly Burst that they had just recently done. But you've got a Koa topped acoustic. You get the abalone purfling along the edge of the binding. More abalone stuff going on with what looks like an ebony bridge. And then we have, once again, a similar to usual, but not the exact same pickguard used on that. We get a bunch of abalone around our rosette. And then as we continue up, you can see the ebony fretboard with the continuation of our super fancy floral design. That looks like it could get confusing, but hear me out. Big swirly. You know it's position 1. Big swirly. 3, 5, 7, 9. Skip 2. 12. It's got the double. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. The dot markers are there. You just have to squint a little bit. But wow, I hadn't looked at the back yet. Fantastic. They didn't skimp. You get the purfling along here too. You get your back stripe. Perfectly book-matched Koa going on here, equally as figured. But for me, it's more about the colors. That's just a perfect autumn burst. But since the maple neck is a lighter colored wood in general, the same finish here appears so much brighter. And in this case, I would actually say that complements the guitar as it breaks up the darkness. It's like the light shining through up the sun or something. Because even your dark finish up here towards your headstock is a little bit brighter, again, because of the maple wood. And judging by our serial number, that's another one that was just fresh off the presses. Man, Gibson's making some fancy arts. I call them the artsy-fartsy guitars. They're not for everyone, but they are a lot of fun to look at. These you really have to appreciate in your hands. But all right, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at these fancy guitars tonight. Filled your brain with some new knowledge, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.